Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Well, viewers, as promised, we are now joined by the Honorable Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, as well as, and he also holds a portfolio of the Secretary of Finance, Trade, and the Economy. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a while.
Yes, good morning. It has been a while, but glad to be here. Good morning, Tobago. Good morning, those who are watching from further afield, because I know we have quite a large diaspora audience, especially. So we welcome them as well, because I'm of the belief that you're Tobagonian wherever you choose to live and work.
And of course, you are joining us at a point in time where Tobago Updates is just no longer a streaming thing. We
Correct.
are a full-fledged TV station.
Well, congratulations to you all on that milestone. Even as we are discussing the budget, this is an example of how growth can happen for entrepreneurs within this space. Perhaps not the traditional type of entrepreneurs that we know of, because traditionally most Tobagonians tend to operate within the distribution sector. You know, we buy some goods and we sell it back at a markup price and we make a profit. But the kind of entrepreneurship you all are doing is involved in media and the creative arts, what we call the orange economy.
Yes.
And even in the budget yesterday, I spent some time speaking about how the orange economy, how that can benefit the economy as a whole. This station should be an example for parents especially who have young people who are interested in the creative industries, so that you know that it's not just about just dancing for fun or singing for fun or writing stories for fun and poetry for fun, or liking the habit of being behind the television screen for fun, but that these are actual viable avenues through which successful businesses and employment and monies can be earned. And so congratulations to Tobago Updates, and congratulations to proving my point that we ought to invest some more in the orange economy so that we could get not 100 more television stations, but we could get a lot more creatives and a lot more innovation happening within the sector.
Certainly. Now, heading straight into the budget, you presented a total of $4.54 billion, which you said is would be equal to an estimation of 6.9% of what you think the national budget would look like. But Minority Leader Kelvin Morris stated that this is an unrealistic request, and based on all the things that have happened within this space, and his view that this administration, your administration, has not been prudent in handling the funds, the public funds. They don't think that they think that that's too much.
Well, let me address it on two fronts. Number one, the accusation that we have not been prudent in managing the funds, that's untrue. In fact, I laugh at the hypocrisy of the statement, because when I look at the handful of supporters yesterday, and it was a handful, I'm seeing among the handful people who were implicated in the audit report for being corrupt. And it says to me that they have aligned themselves fully behind those who attempted to steal from Tobago's purse, in fact, who have stolen from Tobago's purse, and they are backing them and supporting them fully. So I won't be lectured on prudence and management of an economy by Mr. Morris or the PNM for that matter. Secondly, it's also hypocrisy, because they have always asked for the percentage ratio of what I'm asking for as well. As a matter of fact, they go back and look at all the previous budgets. Those by Mr. Jack, you don't have to go very far, and you will see that the figure for which they asked for in the past have either been around what I've asked for or more, never less than what I have asked for over the two budgets I have done. So that's hypocrisy. The third thing is, there are so many developmental challenges that Tobago has, that as an island we have been arguing, including the minority, arguing that we need fixes for, that we need more of. In fact, the minority has been saying, well, people suffering, people struggling, people need more. But people cannot get more if there isn't capital to give more. And what I've asked for is $6.90 out of every $100 spent in the country. Under $10. Under $10 I've asked for just for Tobago's development. And I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. And notwithstanding our resident population size, we have to look at where we are coming from in terms of our lack of development to where we need to go. And how do we make those fixes? And let's break it down into very real terms. When we look, for example, at gratuities, the matter of gratuities, and we have a lot of teachers, for example, who are waiting gratuities and increments. What was allocated in last fiscal coming out of the appropriation bill in the parliament was somewhere in the region of around $7 million. When we calculate the figures, you're talking about us spending about $25 million, and is not even sufficient to cover all that is needed. There's still tons of teachers demanding gratuities and increments, but those cannot be paid if there isn't more money. And one of the things that the minority is very disingenuous about is that a lot of these challenges are their own causing. And I'll give you in the same gratuity matter. Why are we paying backlog on gratuities that exceed 5-7 years? Why? Because every single year, the Parliament appropriates to Tobago sufficient funds to pay gratuities and increments for that fiscal year. You know what's the problem? Is that the monies have been received in the previous fiscal years, and instead of using the money responsibly and paying people their gratuities and increments in those years, they refuse to pay them. So then now there's a huge backlog, and the Parliament is not going to take care of the backlog. And so we are trying to take care of the backlog without an allocation to take care of the backlog. That's their fault. When you look at Bad Rock in Belgarden, how many years Bad Rock has been that way? How many years have we been having fallen rocks? And have we been having a depreciating public road infrastructure? For many years, nothing, the bridge and backlet, all of these things, many years, no work. And so we are now trying to correct ages of bad work or lack of work. And if you listen to the town hall meetings and you listen to the people that come out at every town hall meetings, people are talking about issues that predates us coming into office. And not just predated, but we're talking donkey years old issues. And I'll give you another one. I received a stern letter of warning from a farmer because Tractor Pool collected in excess of $8,000 from him, but has done no work for the gentleman. When I look at the thing, the gentleman first started paying Tractor Pool somewhere in the early 2000s. Early 2000s, I was still in high school. And then today, I am expected to find a solution for farmers like him and so many others who have paid 6 years ago, 7 years ago for Tractor Pool services and still can't get it, and we are struggling to get the backlog covered to the point where we are considering maybe we should take no new applications in Tractor Pool and only deal with people who have paid in the past. Maybe we should give people back their money and start the system afresh. That's what we're discussing now. And so if we are to fix these donkey years old issues that Tobagonians have been complaining about, then $6.90 out of every $100 spent in the country might actually be a very small ask to fix those issues. When you even look at the fact that we are staring a court case for $80 million for the Lansome Link Road.
And that's from 2002.
2002,
yeah.
Right? 2002, I in sixth form. The road built, the road mash up, right? We have to fix the road, and I don't know, but it will appear as if we didn't pay for the road. And we'll see where the court case goes. We have to look at the issue. The point is, if we have to fix these donkey years old issues, and at the same time progress Tobago and give Tobago some innovative developmental works, then it will need $6.90 out of every $100, and it might actually be more than that.
Now, I also want to address a matter that you brought up in the budget, and that has to do with our mid-year budget review, when
Yes.
we've had a couple since, and we have not gotten, or according to you, we have not gotten an equal share or the dispute resolution
Commission.
committee ruling share of the mid-year budget review. And I want you to spend some time going into that matter.
Well, what happens is simply this. Every year, in and around June, the Minister of Finance will come in mid-year and do a review. What the review does is that the minister at that point will have a macro look at the economy, how ministries and how the THA, how we are doing, and the minister will request from ministries and also from the THA requests for either additional funding. In some rare instances, the minister might decide we're not making enough money, oil and gas revenues drop significantly, and perhaps I'm not going to give any more money. And he may even decide at that juncture to make cuts against ministries. But that doesn't happen. The minister almost always comes and increases the budget and say, okay, we need X more money because based on what we're seeing now, based on the revenues collected, we could afford to give some more money and he'll make more money is available. The DRC report, which is what, 20-something years old this year, 22 years old this year, is quite simple. It says that Tobago must get between 4.03% and 6.9% of the budget. That was agreed on. The report was accepted by the Parliament. So the Parliament, in essence, decided in 2001 that Tobago will get every year between 4.03% and 6.9% of the budgetary allocations for that year. When the midterm review happens and the minister increases the budget, it is expected the minister will also increase the THA's budget, the Tobago budget, proportioned according to the DRC's report, 4.03% to 6.9%. This year, the minister provided only 100 million. In the requests I made in the midterm, for example, I included requests for additional funding for agriculture and education, two primary areas.
What percentage is that of the total allocation for the mid-year?
I don't have the exact percentage in my head, but I know that if we were to get 4.03%, it should be about 153 million as opposed to 100 million, right? And therefore, by not giving us that extra 53 million, we have fallen short of the 4.03% that we were supposed to be allocated. And that has happened over and over and over again. The only reason it's coming up now is because somebody different is here. If they were here, they will just accept it, zip their lips, as the former political leader said, zip their lips and go their way merrily and say, we are contented with what we were given. And so all of those things speak to the funding challenges that we do have. And that's why some of the development works take longer than we would like. That's why we have to utilize modalities such as the design, build, finance modality to try to get some projects, development projects off the ground.
Now, you also said that when you brought up the matter with the Minister of Finance, he stated that, he has every right to not give Tobago money at all or to give Tobago less.
Well, he tried to quote the Exchequer and Audit Act, and he tried to say the Exchequer and Audit Act is part of the Constitution, which is not true, as he framed it in his letter. And he essentially said, well, as Minister of Finance, I can decide to just cut the budget of the THA along with any ministry, any local government. And I'm contending that that is not legally so. It has to be extreme circumstances under which that becomes acceptable. Extreme circumstances, for example, there might be a massive earthquake that destroyed parts of the country, and so there has to be a massive reprioritization exercise. Then it's understandable. But even then, you will look at what is the country's revenues at that time. And if you're cutting back on Tobago and not giving Tobago its full amounts, then you also can't go to the Parliament at a mid-year and increase the budget. So if you're cutting back, you can't cut back from Tobago and at the same time increase the allocations. to other ministries, because then your argument won't hold water either. So that's something that we're contending with. It's something that they know that I disagree with. And I could tell you that as an assembly, there are some actions that I won't mention here that we will have to take to ensure we get what we deserve insofar as what was appropriated to Tobago.
All right, we're going to have to pause the conversation right there, Chief Secretary. But when we return, we'll continue going into the budget, as well as we will get to some other things that are within the public space. But I know many of you are eager to find out about. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. On Tobago Updates, viewers, we are being joined by the Honorable Chief Secretary Farley Augustine and the Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy. Now, before we went to the break, we started speaking a little bit about the mid-year budget review, and we know that recently that has raised some concerns, and I want the Chief Secretary to address that here. Now, you made an accusation a week and a half ago, basically, that said that out of that $100 million that was given in the mid-year budget review this year, a request was made of you to use $60 million to pay one contractor. And we heard from the Prime Minister, he refuted those claims and so on. So what is the truth of that matter?
Let me, that is an accusation, it's not an allegation.
Okay.
Let me go through with you the timeline of what happened. So, I was contacted by a senior government official that said, look, one of these contractors needs 60 million. They have to get 60 million. And I have, since winning the election, have been saying to the Minister of Finance that we have inherited quite a lot of debt. In fact, yesterday I indicated it's more than 700 million. Most of that to contractors. There's no way the THA can just pay all of that at one time. Certainly everybody wouldn't get their money. And certainly what we have is not enough to give everybody some either. And so when that request came, I made it clear. I said, but even if we are to service that claim, the money's not there. You're asking me to take from the development funding. We had quite a lot of rainfall. We have to do a lot of fixes in terms of what's happening along public roads, people begging for retaining walls and so on. We just have to prioritize our spend. And so if we are to begin to service any of those claims by those contractors, pursuant to the audit report that I'm doing, then you have to send the money from Trinidad. In fact, you know what my initial proposal to that senior official was? Give us all the money you owe us, and then we could start to make payments available. Instead, the response was, well, that's a no-go. So we will send $100 million, and of the $100 million, ensure they have 60 million. The $100 million came. So the $100 million that was...
and when did the $100 million come?
That came before the midterm review. So the midterm review was essentially just rubber stamping what we already received. Mm-hmm. And from the 100 million, we looked at the audit report. We looked at what it proposed we should pay. And I released from the Ministry of the Division of Finance, 50 million to the Division of Infrastructure to begin those payments and to make those payments in accordance with what is recommended by the audit report. There's still another phase of the audit report that we are awaiting a final report on. When those final reports come, we will have to pay something to those contractors impacted there. So I wasn't even trying to see if I could use out all of the 100 million, because I know when the audit report is completed, on the next phase, we have a series of contractors there who are awaiting payments subject to the recommendations of that audit report. And so we made some payments. In most instances, we made about 10% payments on the claims that were made. Bear in mind that a lot of the claims were inflated, overvalued, as a matter of fact, we had instances where some of the same contractors were paid for works not done. So that has to now be leveled off against what we do owe. So it is quite a complex bit of accounting that has to be done to ensure that we are not overpaying these contractors. The one contractor that I've spoken about publicly was paid a little over $25 million, which is more than any of the others. And might I say, even those so-called Trini contractors who engage in design, build, finance projects for the THA, they have not been receiving payments as yet, because remember, design, build, finance means you do your work upfront and then we take a long time to pay you on the back end. So the truth is, our largest check to date was to a contractor that attempted to extort monies from the THA through me.
And these were works that were done under the previous administration?
Under the previous administration, not by us. And it also includes trying to settle for some incomplete works, incomplete projects. And I'll give you another example. This contractor in question was doing some work for us down at Cove and Chauvin for the relocation of the people affected by the airport. Those works are incomplete as we speak. And when we came into office, we paid up all that was owing on those bills, because it was a situation where they were doing the work in phases and we pay in phases. We paid up all that was owing in those instances. We can't find on record a copy of the contract. We can't find on record any file containing the tender process, the award process, none of that. But in good faith, we paid it up, saying we're completely work, because the people from the airport are crying out because the road is incomplete. Wasa ain't finished running the pipe. Tech demanding that they pay for transformers and so on, because it's just not set up properly so that people can be relocated effortlessly into either Chauvin or Cove. And still, although we paid up what was owing, the works were incomplete. And to the point where I had to say to the Secretary of Infrastructure, I said, listen, I said, stop with this stupidness now. Look how long I tell you, just move on and do the project, forget the contractor, get somebody and complete the work. Because
is it that the contractor is refusing to complete those works?
Well, they just have not returned to the works, and they have demobilized from on the site.
And is this a Tobago contractor?
Of course, a Tobago contractor. And the point I'm making is this, that there are so many nuances involved in the conversation concerning the contractors, a lot of which I don't think is appropriate to say no. But it is why I'm adamant that the THA must take necessary legal steps against people who have wronged the people of Tobago. I'm very adamant about that. I'm confident in the audit report. I'm confident in what was discovered. I can tell you that the contractors who identified by the first phase of the audit that is finalized, that they were all written by legal. And we didn't just complete it, but we wrote them. We identified all the wrongs that were identified by the auditors that they did, and we asked them for a response. To date, only one has responded, and the response leaves much to be desired. And so we have to take all the necessary steps in recovering and safeguarding the purse. And you also have to appreciate that what some people want is that we come into office, forget all the development works, and simply just pay them their monies. The truth is, even if PNM had won this election, if they have the budgetary allocations we have, they will still be unable to pay 100%, because you're talking about one series of work, $300 and something million just in the lead up to an election. And that 300 and something million is equivalent to our entire development budget for a year. So even if PNM had won the election, they will still be unable to pay. You will also bear in mind that I came to you in January last year and I pointed out that when we came in, what we met in terms of unspent balances there, what we met in terms of a contingency fund, and that those were depleted as well. And what had to happen during the fiscal year is that we had to cut back on spending, force ourselves to cut back on spending so that we can have sufficient to pay for CPEP and URP. I want workers in CPEP and URP to appreciate that what is given by the central government to pay CPEP and URP is always woefully inadequate. Not now, yes. Even during the previous regime.
So right? Perhaps for the last 20 years, right, it's been that way.
Right, it has been that way. So you will get a 11 million when the requirement is 50-something million, and so we have to get the extra monies to pay them. Remember at one time, in one election, I think it was 2013, there was a whole argument about whether we should take from the contingency fund to pay CPP and URP worker, or whether contingency funding should remain if we have like a natural disaster to treat with that. And the then Chief Secretary, Mr. London, made a point. If paying workers isn't a contingency, I don't know what is. And many people in Tobago agree with him that, you know, we just have to pay these workers. And so the situation remains the same. No, that has not changed. That has not changed. But I want to introduce into the conversation another aspect that people have to bear in mind. When you listen to the budget debate, you listen to what I presented yesterday, and you will listen to the secretaries when they come on Thursday, you will realize that the majority of the achievements fall under the scope of social welfare. And I expect the economists to give us a lot of licks for that, because they will argue, classical economists will argue that these social welfare programs are not sustainable. They're not sustainable because, remember, you're just giving out. You're not making anything. It's not necessarily to productive use. But coming out of COVID, the social welfare needs are great. They are significant. The demands for what we call food card has increased. You noticed yesterday I mentioned that we even increased the value of food cards for larger families. Before, the THA food card, which is a temporary card, was only $500. Now, if you have a family of 5 or more, you could get $1,000. It was increased for larger families. We increased the salaries of CPEP and URP because coming out of COVID, we also recognize a lot of these workers who were working for bare minimum wage and working for less than sufficient, that many of them lost their second jobs. Gone are the days when you perhaps could have done a CPEP work in the morning and then you get like end by a hotel somewhere or a restaurant somewhere, because most of the hotels and restaurants cannot take on the volume of staff they had before. I know some hotel workers who get to work 1 day a week, 2 days a week. You can't mind a family on that. And so we have to take the hard decision and say, look, we have to give these people living wages. The cataract surgeries that we did, we had to look at the vacancies on the daily rated and start taking on people. All of these are really not sustainable. But coming out of COVID, we had to focus on the social welfare projects more than even the big fancy projects that we had. Because when we do the big fancy projects, people say, but you're doing this nice new road, but I still don't have sufficient groceries. So the need is there. And so to satisfy that need, we have no choice but to do it. And when we look at our conversations with the Caribbean Development Bank, one of the things they said to us, say, look, your social welfare programs are not sustainable enough. But if you don't have them coming out of COVID, you will have chaos within your economy. And so even I had to go against my firm belief about trimming back on some of these social welfare programs because the need is just overwhelming. And then on top of that, last year we had extreme weather patterns in terms of rainfall. We are still paying rent for families. I have a family from Castara that was dislocated, and we haven't been able to complete the fixes around the house as yet. So we're still paying the rent for them so that until we can fix around the house so that they can move back into their homes. We have a family out in Cradley that we're looking to move permanently. There's a family up at Bad Rock on the hill there now that we are trying to move post haste. To move, we have to move the family into a government quarters, try to provide piece of land in Lamy Road for the family. So we build some place for them, because where they live, we will more than likely have to create pathways for road so that we could take care of the Bad Rock Road on the other side. All of these things are happening in this space at the same time.
All right. Well, Chief Secretary, now we've had this accusation coming out that business within Tobago has been difficult since your administration took office. The chamber was looking forward for a plan in terms of paying some of the outstanding contractors because many of them are facing challenges with the banks and so on. And a lot of small businesses are complaining that the economy is not great for them.
Well, the economy for Tobago has not been great for a while. Number one, Tobago's economy shut down to a greater degree than most other Caribbean territories, perhaps save and except for Trinidad. Number two, the Tobago economy reopened much later than every other economy in the Caribbean. We really opened fully in April last year, Easter last year. What the businesses are feeling is what we are seeing, and I spoke about it in the budget. In fact, let me repeat what the statistics are. And when I came into office, I commissioned this study because I wanted to see what was the impact of COVID on our businesses. Approximately 91% of businesses in Tobago suffered a reduction in their revenue. That is a given. Businesses closed, significant reduction in their revenue. And most of the businesses operated outside of the realm of what we call emergency services or such highly public important services that they had to open, right? So most of them had to close. 63% experienced cash flow shortages, which means 63% of our businesses were unable to have enough cash flow to manage the operations coming out of COVID. And that is true because remember, when COVID started, most businesses felt this might be a 2-week thing, a 3-week thing. So I'll keep paying my staff. I'll go out and buy goods and stock up on goods still. I'll keep the lights on because this will pass soon. Nobody thought this will go for 2 years or more. And if people felt that way, then they would have conserved all the liquidity they had at the time so that they will be able to jump back into the business post-COVID. That did not happen. So 63% experienced cash flow issues. 40% experience difficult meeting payroll expenses. So 40% of our businesses have challenges paying their staff and paying their staff on time. 37% experience difficulties in honoring their obligations to financial institutions. 37%. Right? Now remember, and it's not just contractors, I'm talking about businesses generally. You have to tell me, the public have to tell me, whether they think I should forget holding contractors to account, forget what some might be trying to steal from the public purse, just pay them what they demand, and forget that. Or should I do the responsible, the morally right thing, and pay them only what they deserve only for the work that they have done, at the quality of work that they have done, and conserve the rest of money to do other things. So it's not just contractors in the space, all of whom were eating off the fat of the land when things were good. Were they getting overvalued contracts? I see situations where we have invoices certified by engineering works. Who was protesting yesterday? Certified. Invoice certified and certificate of completion 2 months after. So in other words, you certifying the works were completed well, long after you certify the invoice to payment and pay the contractor. Instances where contractors get the payments, full payments in advance of the work even starting. That's what we're talking about. So I don't want anybody to come and try to say, well, it's just the contractors. No, there is a challenge for businesses across the island.
But what about the knock-on effect?
37% have challenges meeting the obligations to financial institutions. 36% can't pay the rent. And 35% experience disruptions in raw materials. That's the hardcore data coming out of COVID. And so for the business community, what the TH has to do for them is more than just give them loans. Because if we give them a loan, they can't afford to pay us either. Because as it is, they're owing the banks. And so that was in the month that just went. I had a meeting with the Bankers Association, met with a small internal team led by Ms. Vernie Shields. They're exchanging the legal teams that's now working out how a revolving loan program from the THA can work. I'm saying I'm willing to give the business sector this money, and I'm willing to wait to get back the money from them because I know they have obligations to the other financial institutions. But the issue is more than just getting cash. And you have to also understand it's in the context where flights to the island have been significantly diminished. We moved from 24 to 12. And
we are still at 12.
And we're still at 12.
The last flight leaves at 8:35.
Right. More than a year later, still at 12. Those in the tourism sector, the last town hall, it was raised that people coming in through KLM, they're losing customers coming in through KLM and coming from international flights because they don't want to overnight at a hotel in Trinidad and then come to Tobago. So we're losing visitors in that regard. You're talking about the people who are accustomed coming to stay in the villas, the hotels from right in Trinidad. Many of them can't get flights to come. Still a problem more than a year after we reopen our economy. So we cannot see the challenges that the business community is facing in isolation of a larger problem. Right. And I mean, I have been very vocal about Caribbean Airlines and getting flights here. Very vocal about the need to increase the flights to the point where I say, look, I'm willing to pay the cost of keeping the Tobago airport open, right? Still, they didn't take me on. I got so far. I fixed up the VIP lounge in the airport there. So I said, no, if we into tourism and people bringing in Burna Boy and all kind of fancy artists and so on, you have to have a place that is suitable. Piaco has nice VIP lounge that they can come through and so on, where dignitaries, diplomats can come through. Tobago didn't have any. I fixed up one in the airport because we are trying our best to create a situation where the economy gets ticking again. And when we look at what the data says, in terms of contribution, and it shows tourism is now our third largest contributing factor to our economy. Tourism used to be second. The only thing that used to be to tourism used to be the government sector, right? Now it is the government sector, and then followed by finance, insurance sector, and then tourism. The tourism sector is third largest, only 14% of our GDP. But finance, insurance, real estate, and the business sector is our second largest contributor. The government sector is the largest at 46%. And that should be a worrying sign for all of us. It is for me, because tourism is where we have a competitive advantage. Not that real estate and insurance isn't good. That's good. But remember, where real estate is concerned, we still have challenges in terms of foreigners being able to buy land. So in other words,
there's some leakages happening.
The inputs we have from real estate that's accounting for the second largest contributor is really Trinis coming up and buying properties. And they are part of the country called Trinidad and Tobago. And nothing can stop them from coming up here and buy land. The same way Tobagoans go to Trinidad and buy land, they can come up and buy land. So they contribute to real estate and insurance and the financial sector being the second largest output for GDP, in the second largest productive sector on the island. Tourism is a third. And you can't drive a service-driven economy without movement of people. And I'll say this final thing to those that's listening. Caribbean Airlines should not be looking to make the bulk of their profit from people just buying tickets. That's not the way you view transportation in an economy. If countries view transportation's contribution to an economy in that way, there will be no subway in New York. There will be no oyster system with a tube and a bus above ground in London. There will be no metro system anywhere in the world, because in most parts of the world, these systems don't make profit. But what they do is that they move people around so that the economy moves in a much larger way. Caribbean Airlines' contribution has to be, how do we move people in and out of the country and move people between the two islands in a way that allows for there to be greater spend in the economy. Remember, our resident population, based on the last census, is only about 65,000. The economies of scale remain small. And so if we can inflate our population by increasing the number of people coming to the island, it means more people at the supermarkets, more people in the restaurants and hotels, more people buying from the man selling fruits on the side of the road, more people coming and buy from you when you're pushing your car through the traffic selling water or selling juices, more people at the gas station, more people on the here for a weekend, more people will show up and say, I got to visit church today and I got to pay more, pay a little offering or something.
Right.
We have to look at the impact of transportation on the economy and the lack of it on the economy as well. And that also speaks to the fact that all the monies we're spending on marketing Tobago will come to naught if it is people just can't get here. The return on the dollar will not be there. If we spend the money marketing Tobago, Trinidad, say come up, bring a family here, don't go Barbados, come Tobago. But then they at Piaco on standby for 5 hours. That's a waste of the marketing money.
And additionally, of course, that is a concern that we Tobagonians have to deal with.
Because we use the service not for leisure, but for business
yes.
and for treating with critical services like medical services, legal services, town and country planning services, etc., etc.
Quite a whole lot. But viewers, well, Chief Secretary, you're going to have to take a quick break. But when we return, we'll continue with our discussions here on GMT. So viewers, don't go anywhere.
The energy fill the sky. Tobago updates.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversations with Honorable Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, as well as the Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy. Now, we've got to leave the budget conversations just for now, because we're going to have the budget debate happening on Thursday, where a lot of the things the Chief Secretary spoke about will be expanded on.
By the secretaries, yeah.
Yes, but we need to treat with some issues within the space, and there's a whole lot. I'm not sure if we can get through, but we're going to try. Now, the matter of the Chief Administrator. Are we still without a Chief Administrator at this point in time?
As of 9:08 a.m., we are still without a Chief Administrator.
What is the latest information on that?
The latest information I have is that a recommendation was received by the Public Service Commission, received sometime last week, Tuesday, but they had their meeting already, or agendaed their meeting already before the recommendation was received. That's what I last heard. And so we're just waiting on the Public Service Commission to complete their work on that regard.
Now, this issue has generated quite a lot of discussions from the Prime Minister and so on. And I mean, we had Sitika Williams, or their Assistant Secretary here, explaining some things. And as a result, the Prime Minister said that he would no longer have a conversation with you without a third party present.
Well, tell him I'll work with the crosses, Sitika, or when I'm coming to the meetings with him. So I'll have a third party.
All right. No, I mean, and
I should probably be the one saying that, because I went to the House last week, Thursday, and I felt it was critical to identify the timelines, to share by reading onto the records all the letters and the communications between the Prime Minister and myself. We showed that the Prime Minister was less than truthful about how this matter panned out. As a matter of fact, it was only when the DPA's office responded to my pre-action protocol letter that I discovered that they were preparing to make an appointment on the 17th of May. The Prime Minister and I only met on the 22nd of May. There's no way the Public Service Commission could be preparing to make an appointment when the law is clear that the Prime Minister consults the Chief Secretary, then the recommendation goes to the Public Service Commission, and then an appointment is made. That's the order in which it ought to happen. And I had to write 2 days before the expiration of Ms. John's tenure to say, look, nobody consulted with me. And I shared in the House last week, Thursday as well, that last year when Ms. John came, nobody consulted with me. Completely disrespected. And I didn't come to the media. I didn't go to the public. I didn't cuss anybody. I didn't get on bad despite having a right to do so. In fact, at the time, I thought maybe I should go to court and have the court reject the appointment and send Ms. John packing. And I said, you know what? Let me just write them and warn them and tell them, don't do it again. But we're back at this point again, and I have no other conclusion to make other than to say that had I not intervened by writing the Prime Minister, that they would have attempted to do the same thing, and that is highly disrespectful. And let's be very honest, if Mrs. Prasad Bisesa was Prime Minister and Orville London was Chief Secretary, and that happened, Tobago would have been on fire. Miss John would have never been accepted last year. There would have been bacchanal, talk of disrespect. They would have blocked road. They would have protests. They would have gone to court. All kind of things would have happened, right? I was kind enough to accept the disrespect last year, and I pointed it out to them. And in this year again, there's a whole fight. There's no need for a whole fight.
And what about the allegation that...
The truth is, the appointment of a chief ad should not even result in such a large public discussion, because it cheapens the position. It creates challenges, PR challenges for a public servant that will now fill the position. And if you notice, when this matter first came up and was first asked about, we actually laid the blame at the feet of the Public Service Commission, because I was under the impression that the Prime Minister had already made the recommendation to the Public Service Commission pursuant to his consultation with me. And so they were the ones sticking, as the young people were saying, only to discover that he was the one sticking on the matter. But hopefully we will get someone into the position this week. And then we take it from there.
And then the allegation of yourself knowing beforehand that a certain candidate would have been suspended, specifically the permanent secretary and cast.
Let's look at how public servants are disciplined. And that's why in the House I exposed that this was part of a plot to try to install who they want to be chief administrator, so that they can destroy the audit report and so that they can remove the responsibility from those who stole from the THA and who misappropriated THA funds. When a public servant must be disciplined, the political directorate has nothing to do with that. In the Tobago space, the chief administrator is the one who takes the lead. Now, I as chief secretary, if I have an issue with a public servant, I can take it upon myself and I can write directly to the chairman of the Public Service Commission. I have not done any such thing. When the audit report came across my desk, the final version of the first one where we look at 80-something roads done by 3 contractors, and I read it, I said, but this thing implicating some public servants. I made a confidential file that I made available to the then chief administrator, and I said to the then chief administrator, here is the file, read it, and you take whatever actions are necessary against the public officers that are guilty. The chief administrator then, she, as far as I'm advised, made the allegations and sent them to the Public Service Commission, who then read through the allegations, found that they were serious enough and warranted a suspension. Farley Chavez Augustine has nothing to do with the suspension, nor does Farley Chavez Augustine orchestrate the suspension. As a matter of fact, I was only aware of the suspension the same time the public was aware of the suspension, right? That's it. And when the DPA wrote, I think the DPA's letter, the DPA said that the suspension happened on the 24th of May. 24th of May is when the suspension happened. 24th of May. The Prime Minister and I met on the 22nd.
Yeah.
The Chief Ad's last day was on the 17th of May.
Yeah.
The DPA office is claiming that the former Chief Ad wrote them on the 17th of May. So her letter was dated the last day she worked. I can't verify that because I have not seen what the Chief Ad wrote to the Public Service Commission. But it was in her right and within her duty so to write to the Public Service Commission. The only person that should have, or only entity that should have informed the Prime Minister that somebody that he might have wanted to be Chief Ad had these things hanging over his head should be the Public Service Commission. Because this was a senior public official that operated out of the office of the Prime Minister. So it's the Public Service Commission that's supposed to inform him, not Farley Chavez Augustine. When the Prime Minister and I met, we did not discuss any name except one name, which was a recommendation I made. So the Prime Minister did not come and say, well, I like this person or I like that person. In fact, I was led to believe that the Prime Minister was comfortable with me making the recommendation because at the end of the day, I'm the one leading the space. The chief administrator becomes my chief advisor. And of what interest is the Prime Minister in picking the chief advisor for the chief secretary? Except if he wants to destroy the chief secretary. Of what interest is that to the Prime Minister? And so the Prime Minister rightfully gave me the impression that, look, I really want your recommendation. So if the Prime Minister had come and said, what do you think of this person or that person? Then I would have said, okay, well, this is the flaw in this person. This is why I'm not recommending this person. But no name came up. And I could tell you, in my meeting with the Prime Minister, I did not bad talk a soul. So I did not go in that meeting to say, I don't like this person because... No. I did not bad talk a soul. In the absence of getting a merit list from the Public Service Commission, I recommended one person and I share the values of that one person to the Tobago House of Assembly and to the people of Tobago. That was it. And in fact, we did not even spend the entire hour and a half that we met talking about a chief administrator either. We spoke about other issues pursuant to Section 31 of the THA Act, which says that we should meet and have regular conversations. And so I don't think it was my duty to tell he about what's hanging over somebody's head. Nor do I think it's my duty to give him a copy of the report. The audit report is the THA's business. That is our business to manage. And one of the reasons why I have not disclosed the report publicly, I shared what popped up in the preliminary report without calling the names of a single contractor. And from the final report, I gave general information that in no way prejudices the case. But it's because we have every intention to take all legal action necessary against those that are culpable. And so the final report will become the subject of many court cases. I am sure about that. And so responsibly, I'm not just handing it out to anyone, including the Prime Minister, who I am saying for the record has a close associate who is fingered in the report. So in my mind, what we are seeing, the Prime Minister posturing about a chief administrator, we see the people popping up in the protest yesterday. We see the demand to give them a copy of the report and so on. Just pay them and forget the report. All of that is a part of a larger plot that they have to try to squash the report, because the truth is, the bad things that happen, the Executive Council then must take responsibility for it. They were the ones who approved that particular minute. They were the ones who authorized the madness, and they are equally responsible. And so they are trying to have the entire thing squashed so that nobody will take responsibility for it. That is part of the scheme that they're on.
Now, Chief Secretary, you only got a few more minutes. I know you've got quite a lot to say, which is why we hope that you are going to be more often with us going forward.
No, let's be fair.
Yes.
I am certain I have made more TV appearances in my year and some months of being Chief Secretary than any other previous Chief Secretary in a single term, as a guarantee. Because Chief Secretaries don't normally make themselves available to just jump on TV every Monday morning. But I will share myself with all the other media outlets because, of course, many of them want to talk about the budget as well. So I'll share myself.
Yes.
We're coming up to a break in the THA. We're coming up to also having the realignment post the budget. We are also expecting to have some things happening in the space in July, because I was notified that the president might be desirous of making a first official visit to Tobago in July. So all of those things are coming up in the space as well.
All right,
that will
Chief
take up some
Secretary,
time.
but before we go, one final question. This has to do with the controversial audio clip, well, I should say clips, and there's a threat of more to come. But one thing that people are raising some concerns about is that whole idea that was spoken in that clip about shaping the narrative, continuing the campaign, even when you gave the commitment upon taking up office as Chief Secretary that the campaigning is done and you're taking off your political clothes and putting on the Tobago hat.
Right. Yes, the formal campaigning is finished, but every single government has to shape a narrative. If we are not going to do that, then we should close down Information Division. There should not be a Ministry of Public Information in Trinidad. The government should not have any information programs anywhere in the country. Just have none of it at all. We should not do these interviews at all. What I'm doing here is also shaping the narrative. Not have any of that at all. So no responsible government anywhere in the world, whether you are within the Westminster system, as in the UK, or you are in the US system, where they have separation of powers and where you have a press secretary that comes out of the room every week, almost every other day, and have press conferences. All of those things are about shaping the narrative. And I was very clear in my public briefing, two things. Number one, that the matter came up as a wider conversation. When you listen to the wider clip, you realize that it was a much wider conversation about how often secretaries ought to make themselves available to the media. Should we engage other people to fight the wars for us online? All of this was a broader strategic conversation that was had. Evidently, a year later, several of those things were not implemented. But as any responsible government will do, you discuss all options. And I assure you, if you should be a fly in the wall in a cabinet meeting, you realize that they discuss all options. All options are discussed. And that's why the laws tend to hold conversations at the executive level to be outside of the remit of a freedom of information, for example, because it's expected that you have these raw conversations without implications on you, because all the things you discuss, you will not necessarily implement. That's one. Number two, one of the things I pointed out in the public briefing is that, look, every elected member, if they want, can just hire people to be at their district offices who can manage both their social media responses and manage their offices, because you're entitled to that. Every elected member of the House, all 15 of us, are given, well, we are not given, but $20,000 is allocated per month to hire as many staff as you can hire. Within that 20,000, with no staff getting less than 2,500, you hire them, you set the job title, you set the scope of work for them. So if people want, they could have easily done that, you know. And I'll address one more thing that I see in this space. Is I was kind of waiting and hoping that somebody will accuse me so I could sue them. Because I see some people trying to insinuate. And of course, my lawyers are looking at what the insinuate whether or not Miss Felix was hired to pay off for a court case that she brought against me under the former PDP. And I want to set the record very clear, be pellucidly clear in saying that Miss Felix was paid by me through my lawyers. I didn't even pay Miss Felix hand to hand. I didn't send money directly from me to Miss Felix. I paid Miss Felix through my lawyers, which in itself even nullify this intent to hire somebody like Miss Felix on the legal side to then find time to do PR and dirty workforce, because this is the same person who have me in court. In fact, I've been joking to the executive. I said, look, this person who was secretary hired, an assistant secretary hired as a personal staff member, took me to court under the PDP. She entered the party PDP, you know. She took me to court saying, you led the PDP campaign, PDP owe me, you pay me, right? And in the first instance, I paid some last year, and I paid some this year, all through lawyers. So she still had to get your money from me, not even through the government side as is being insinuated by some. But I was kind of waiting, hoping that they wouldn't insinuate, but that they would just say it so I could sue somebody because I could do with their money. I could do with their money. And that just proves the point that even an assistant secretary hired somebody who took their chief secretary to court, and who the chief secretary had to pay through his lawyers. And that should tell you how we did not in any nepotistic kind of manner hire these people as our personal staff. For sure, though, no secretary, assistant secretary should hire personal staff that wouldn't come with loyalty and trustworthiness. That only makes sense. I guess I might be the only stupid person in the bunch who kept the personal staff of a former secretary and then let it go their way, and just bring in my own people, and that's just my personality.
So just to make it clear that hire of Ms. Felix was not as a result of any kind of a pardon, any kind
No, and I can assure you, and in fact you should ask Ms. Felix. She should come and clear the air. She could ask her lawyer to come and clear the air. But she was paid through her lawyer from my lawyer. I didn't even go to her directly. I did everything through the lawyers.
All right. Now, unfortunately,
there's one more thing that I thought you would have asked about, that I must mention before I run off from here. Tell me why they get me, right? And I know you have a next program coming up, and all they're big and all on TV now, so they just can't go extend the time anymore. Only have strict timelines and thing now.
It is what it is.
Only get biggish on me now, but that's all right. That is all right. But one thing that I must mention, because I saw a very a hatchet job that was done in the press, where they listed as the contractors and said these were all sole selected and Trinidad businesses cashing in. And you know, when we looked at it, they mentioned contractors from the Division of Food Security. You know those contractors from Food Security that were paid? They were paid by ministries out of Trinidad, not the Tobago House of Assembly. The teacher did not engage them. Trinidad ministries engaged them and paid them, not Tobago at all. But they're in a report saying that Tobago THA hired them as sole select. So the people named who they put there as sole select were not sole selected. Many of them were not sole selected. They were in fact through open tenders. But a reporter is saying that they were sole selected. A lot of inaccuracies. And so I asked the secretaries to put out a press release tomorrow and put out the data to the public tomorrow to correct the errors. I asked that they write the editor of the Express to point out the errors in that report and what happened in that report. And let me tell you how nefarious the thing was. Education, because when they were late last year with doing their school repairs, sole selected the contractors, right? Yesterday, in my report, I said it was 30 million spent on school repairs. This figure was wrong. It's actually 43 million spent on school repairs, 96 packages, 57 contractors, right? Only one Trinidadian out of the 57 contractors. And there was a specialist from Trinidad. You know what? They didn't mention none of the data from education. And that reporter had asked education for their data as well. But of course, the data from education is suit the narrative, because the data from education showed that 57 contractors, 56 Tobagonians got soul selected. I want to look at it on the macro level. It will show that most of the soul selection happened to Tobago contractors, and it can suit the political narrative. So they leave out that data, and they misrepresent a lot of the data. Contractors that were hired by Trinidad ministries, paid by Trinidad ministries for works done in Tobago were being placed as if they're done by Tobago divisions or that sort of thing. And so we will correct the record this week. We will not just put out a press release, but we'll put out the data. We will write the editor, we'll have the record corrected. And that also speaks to part of the larger plot to destabilize, to create chaos, to make noises so that people will be distracted from all of the gains, all of the wins, and all of the deliveries. But we won't be distracted. We keep focus. Tobago, we keep focus. We keep fighting. We keep pushing. The next time I'm back, we're coming to talk about Tobago's autonomy, because that is the backbone of all that we do and say, and all that we discussed today, from the chief ad to the incursions from central government, the obstacles from statutory bodies, all speaks to the issue of autonomy in Tobago, that all Tobagonians must get behind and stand up on. But thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Tobago, for listening and being here. Pass. I hope all you know in the government work, sit down watching and then doing the people work. Eh? Accountants, especially accounts, the people who want the checks, especially the contractors, organize the people, your service providers, money, please and thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Secretary. Always a pleasure to have you on with us, and we are grateful that you chose us, Tobago Updates Television, to
as the first one.
As the first one.
Well, at least you're trying to ship me away to Canada, so I have to come here first.
Thank you so much, Chief Secretary. Viewers, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sticking with us. And of course, we are Tobago Updates Television. Don't forget, you can get us on 102 on Amplia. So if you don't have Amplia, you need to get connected where you can see this interview again. And yeah, continue for your support. And viewers, continue paying attention. We have brunch coming up in a little bit with Janelle, so you don't want to miss that, as well as all the other stuff that we have at Tobago Updates. We've got a lot coming to you, so you want to make sure you stay tuned 24/7.
Wake up and hear me neighbor. 60,000 people strong, and the vibes is never wrong. We are beauty, we are power, we are people.